Good morning, everybody. Today we are on 22a, 13 lines from the top. So the Mishnah had been talking about the ways in which you can violate many lotases and incur many counts of malchos, of lashes, for one act. Maski floor of Hoshaya. Rav Hoshaya asked, "Lishos name hazareh b'nachalesan." Why don't we also count? So we talked about plowing on Yom Tov with mixed breeds, and Kulayim was involved. But so we had the Mishnah came up with 8. Now we're trying to see if we can add to that. Lishos name hazareh b'nachalesan. Why don't you also say that this plowing activity took place in a Nachal Esan, which is the term for a wadi where the Egla Rufa was brought. The Egla Rufa is the ritual where someone is killed, someone is a murder victim is found and don't know who did it. So the elders of the nearest city have to do this ritual to atone for this act having been done, and that's done in a Nachal Esan. The Torah says, and about that it says, "Asher lo yiubad bo v'lo yizareh." It's a place that can no longer be cultivated. So, if you violate that at the same time, if you're plowing in that place, that would be a ninth violation. And this is the source of the lotase, as I said. Maskechler of Chanina gives another possibility. While you are walking along and plowing, you erase God's name. So there's a maybe a page in which God's name is written, and you trample over it, and that would be another violation of the Azar Azamiyacha. What's the law? Vibadtem es Shemam lo sasin kein Hashem lokechem. In discussing avodah zarah, it says you should uproot out the avodah zarah. You should make their name be destroyed, and don't do so to God. So that's the lotase of not of against erasing God's name or destroying God's written name. And another possibility, maskiflaro v'yavo, v'lech shavname hakotzeitz baharto. Also, while you're plowing, you cut off a baharis, is a lesion of saras, which you can't do. You have to follow the procedure. You can't just cut away tsaras. You have to go through the proper procedure. And where's the lotas in the Torah? Hishamer b'nega hatzaras. So most of the things that have to do with tsaras are positive commandments. Do this, do that, and none of those things incur malchos. But only a lotas, a negative commandment, don't do this. Incurs malchos, but because it says hishamer b'negat saras, the word hishamer or shemor always indicates a negative side, a lotase. In other words, like it is a negative commandment to fail to do the assay involved the proper way. Maskifla Abaye asks the following: while you're doing that, you move the choshen from the ephod. These are the big day kahuna. The Kohen Gadol wore a an apron, the ephod, and on that was attached the choshen, the breastplate, and the Torah says don't allow them to become separated. So while you're plowing, you know you cause that to happen, or v'hamasir bade aron, or you remove the poles from the Aron Kodesh. Vazara says you're not allowed to do that either. It says, as we'll see in a second, you have to keep the poles attached to the Aron. And so, in this plowing activity, what if you did that at the same time? And what is the lotase? V'lo yasiru, lo yasiru mimanu, but B'tabos haron yu abadim lo yasiru mimanu. The poles had to be in the rings, the attached rings to the ark. They shouldn't be removed. And v'lo yizach hachoshen, and the choshen should not be moved the from the ephod. And maskiflar. So these are all additional possibilities to add to the maximum number of violations you could do at one time. Here's another one: maskiflar Ravashi v'lech shenami hachoresh ba'atzei ashera. What if the plow is made out of Asherah wood of Avodah Zarah? You can't have anything from Avodah Zarah. Muskavor Ravina asked, what about if while you're plowing, you're uprooting fruit trees? Torah says regarding warfare, but it's generalized. Don't cut down fruit trees when you're besieging a city. Amalei Rav Zera or Rav Mani, and Rav Zera said, what if you said, you besides plowing in this way on Yom Tov, you said you had already taken a shvua, an oath that you're not going to plow on Yom Tov, so that would be violating your shvua. Hasam Lokachal Shvua. So the Gemara says, oh, this one's not a good one because that shvua is not even a good shvua in the first place. Mushba b'yom me'arsinahu, because you're taking a shvua not to do something that you're already obligated not to do, because the Torah says don't plow on Yom Tov. So by you taking a shvua, an oath to not plow on Yom Tov, that's not a valid shvua. It's something that you're already obligated not to do, so that doesn't count as a shvur. So there's no lav there, no additional lav of a shvur. Amalei. So Rav Zera says, actually, there is a way where that shvua could be effective. If you take a general oath that you're not going to plow, so then the oath applies, right? And if you do it on Yom Tov, you violate that oath. Since the oath is valid regarding the weekdays, so it's a valid oath, and it is effective even on Yom Tov. So if you were to do that, maybe it would be an additional violation of the Shvuah. So the answer is needed the ise b'sheila lokatane. No, we're not talking about. We're not talking about something like if you're counting lavin, we're not talking about a lav that can be rolled back. In other words, you could always annul, have the oath annulled. Hello, the Gemara says, really? Wait a second. One of the things you counted in the Mishnah of the 8 violations in this way of plowing is that it was animals of hekdesh that you use to plow, and hekdesh is like a netter. It's like something that can be annulled if you you can annul that designation of hekdesh. The Gemara says b'bechor. When the Mishnah says an animal of hekdesh, it meant a bechor animal, right? A bechor is consecrated by birth. It doesn't require, in order to be hekdesh, it doesn't require a designation. Very Nazir, but wait a second. The Gemara says you also said one of the 8 violations in your case in the Mishnah is that the person was a Kohen and a Nazir. Well, a Nazir is a vow that you can annul. So the Gemara answers Nazir Shem Shon. No, the Mishnah is talking about a permanent Nazir. There's 2 types of Naziros, you may recall. There's a regular Nazir who, for a specific period, standard period would be 30 days. You can't drink wine or become tameh. But there's also something called Nazirus Shimshon, which is modeled after the Shofet Shimshon. Who was a Nazir, a lifetime Nazir, and that is not something that can be annulled. So the Gemara says, well, wait a second, Nazir Shimshon, if you're talking about a Shimshon type of Nazir, Barit Muyil Mesim, who? He doesn't have the prohibition, like the prohibition in the Mishnah was you're a Nazir and you were plowing in a cemetery. But in Nazir Shimshon, he's only forbidden from drinking wine, but he doesn't have the issue of being forbidden to become Tomei. So we can't be talking about Nazir Shimshon in the Mishnah because that's not a violation for him. Ella Haitana Isur Kolel Leislei. No, what we want to say is to leave out the you took an oath not to plow. That our Mishnah did not mention that because our Mishnah doesn't holds that a prohibition that is added on to something that's already prohibited doesn't take effect. That's called an Isur Kolel. So even if you made a shvua not to plow at all, you still wouldn't violate that, and that shvua is a valid shvua, but you wouldn't be violating it on Yom Tov because on Yom Tov you already have the um, prohibition of plowing. So, yes, it is a valid shvuah, but if you violate it on Yom Tov when you're already forbidden from plowing, you're not chayav, according to this, we're saying that our Mishnah would hold that you're not liable for an additional penalty. And that's why the Mishnah didn't say that there's a way you could have this ninth way of incurring more penalties. However, all the other questions are still unaddressed, right? We had like five or six suggestions of how you could violate even more prohibitions in one act. Okay, and now a little side point on plowing with a shor and chamor, with an ox and a donkey together. Um, Amar Hoshaya, Hamarbia shor psule hamukdashim. If you breed an ox, even with its own type, within the same within the same species, but it is a shore that was hekdesh and then became disqualified, so it got a mum or something. So if you breed that animal, lokashnaim, there's two malchus penalties. Um, it's a it's so by being a psul hekdesh, it becomes legally a distinct species. Um, so um, so by breeding it, you're even with another cow, you would be violating the um, rule against mixed breeds, and you'd be violating the hektish prohibition, because even though it's pasul, it's still hektish. Amar Yitzchak, Hamanig b'shor psulei hamukdashim. If you lead such an ox, psulei hamukdashim, like you use it to carry, to carry something or any kind of work, look, you get malchus shari guf echodu, because although it is a single body, asal kasu b'shnei gufim. The Torah calls it, like, treats it as two. It's part hekdesh and part chol. So working with this animal by itself is like working with a mixed breed, like with an ox and a donkey, even though it's in the same animal, and you'd be chayav for this kilai, which is a little bizarre, but the Gemara leaves it right there. Next Mishnah. How many lashes do you get? Kama malkinoso. How many lashes does a person get if he has to undergo lashes? Arbaim chasarachas, 40 minus 1, 39. Shenamar, b'mispar arbaim. The Torah actually says, so this is in two different phrases that are juxtaposed, that what's the whole pasuk? Kadei Rishasov Mispar, you call upon of Kadei Rishasov Mispar, you strike the person according to his wickedness with the number, the designated number. Arbaim Yakenu Lo Yosef, 40 lashes, no more. And so the juxtaposition of this Bemispar Arbaim, the number 40, the Gemara bizarrely, I think, derives. Minyan shehusamuch larbaim. It's not 40, as it says explicitly. You get 40 lashes. It's a number that approaches 40, which is 39. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Arbim Shlemos Loka. Rabbi Yehuda says ridiculous. He gets 40. Torah says 40, you get 40. Ve'echanu Lokas Hayasera. Where do you get the 40th lash? Bank Seifa, between your shoulders. We'll see details about exactly where and how where on the body the lashes were administered. And Rabbi Yehuda says this 40th one you get between the shoulders. Ein omdin also el b'makos rius lishtalish. You have to have a number of makos divisible by 3. So when the court determines how many lashes you get, the standard number is 39, as we saw, which is divisible by 3. But also you have to evaluate the person to make sure you're not going to kill him. So if a person is evaluated that he can only withstand a lower number, he gets the lower number, but it has to be a number divisible by 3. Abdul Kabul Arbaim. Now, let's say that the person was assessed and he could get 40, or really 39, but we're just going to use the shorthand of 40, or according to Rabbi Yehuda, actually 40. Veloka miktsas, and you start giving them the lashes, and then the Amdusha and Yachol Kabul Arbaim, and then you see he's not going to be able to make it to 40. He'll die before we get there. Potter. So then you don't have to um, you don't have to reevaluate, well, how many more can he take? Let's say you've given him 15 and you realize, this is so bad that he's not going to make it to 40. Maybe he could make it to 25. Okay. Um, but no, we don't do that. We say once you've stopped to reassess, then he's done. There's no further malchus given. Um, the Gemara will discuss why, but no, not to spoil things. But he's already like the underlying motivation of giving lashes is to humiliate someone, right? Or to something like that. I'm not sure humiliate is the right translation, but he's already undergone that once you start giving him the lashes, he's got the humiliation. If you have to stop for some reason, then the humiliation has already been accomplished, and so you can't continue any further. Abdullah Kabul Shmonas, right? Let's say he was assessed that he could get 18 lashes. Umishalaka, but once the 18 was done, you know what? He's doing fine. We were wrong. He could withstand more. Potter, no, the same idea. You can't, once you've stopped giving the original uh, designated number of lashes, or once you've started that, then there's no further assessment. He's already paid his penalty. Now, my Tama, why are we going with 39 rather than 40? Iksiv Arba'im b'mispar, if the Torah had reversed the words and say Arba'im b'mispar, 40 in number, Havamina, Arba'im b'minyana, means 40. Hashilsiv b'mispar Arba'im, now that the words are reversed, the number 40, minyan shu sochemas Arba'im, number that leads into 40, which is 39. Amarava, Kamatip Shai Sharin. How foolish are people? The Kaime Makame Sefer Torah, they stand up to give respect to a Torah scroll. V'lo Kaime Makame Gavarabba, and they don't stand before a Talmud Chacham. Deal with Sefer Torah Ksiv Arbaim. Because what's more important, the Torah itself or the Talmud Chacham who interprets it? The Torah says Arbaim 40, V'yasar Rabbanim Batzru Chada, and the rabbis came along and said no, it means 39, and so the rabbis are more powerful. And as a corollary, are more deserving of respect than the Torah itself. Now, this is really a very striking thing. I mean, Rava is essentially saying, you know what, the Torah really meant 40, but we're coming along and reinterpreting it. So, Rabbi Yomer, Arbaim Shlemos. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it's really 40. 40 means 40. Oh, Rabbi Yitzchak, my Talmud, Rabbi Yehuda, what's his reason? Siv, because the Torah says, the Navi says, Maha Makkot ben Yodecha, what are these wounds between your hands? V'amar asher hu kesi base me'avai. I've been hit in the house of those who love me. So the point here is that if you're striking someone who is a false, this is referring to or putting the words in the mouth of a false prophet, if you're striking him, it's base ma'avai. It's because you love him, right? You're trying to bring him around to the right way, and so um, and so it's Bein Yadecha. So Rabbi Yehuda says that 40th one is like between your shoulders, and between your hands, I guess, would be on your back between your shoulders, and that's only where the 40th lash goes. So we'll see shortly where the other ones go. So it must be that we're referring to a 40th lash. Rabbana, what about the rabbis? How b'tinako shel beis rabban hu? No, we're not talking about formal malchus administered by beis. We're talking about getting hit by your teacher in school. I'll just leave that there without comment. Enom Nino Makos Haruyos. You only do the assessment. What was the mission exactly? But Makos Haruyos Lishtalish has to be 1 second. Yeah, that's how the mission started. It has to be by 3, but also if you have to reevaluate, then he's already done. Why is that? Lakayin lo lakalo. Now the Mishnah, the way the Mishnah states it is, it's like only once you've started giving him the lashes, is this effective? That if you have to reevaluate, then you just stop. Raminu Amdul Kabul Arba'im. They have another brisa that says they said you could take 40 lashes. And then they said, no, you know what? We were wrong. He can only take 25 putter. Then he's exempt altogether. Amdul Kabul Shmonas, right? If they said a lesser number than 40, first they said he can only take 18, and then they re-examined him and said, no, he could get 40. Potter, again, he doesn't have to be lashed at all. And it sounds like before they even started the lashes, right? The second assessment was done before they started the lashes, but our Mishnah implies it's only after you started the lashes. No problem. One case is talking about um, where he was reassessed on the same day. Um, so it's like if you re-examine some, you get a second opinion on the same day, and it turns out your first estimation was so off, right? It was so wrong. We just discount that one. But if you examine someone today and then you re-examine them next week, then you could assume his condition changed in the meantime. Um, and so both assessments are considered valid, um, and that would be the case for our Mishnah, where um, where you 1 second. Yeah, that would be the case of the Brisa, where the second assessment is deemed more valid than the first one.
But he stopped, didn't he? I mean, isn't that a case where he stopped in the middle? If he evaluates him a day later, 2 days later, then he's already stopped. And is
If you stopped in the if you stopped in the
saying
middle, no,
continuous?
right. We're trying to determine if he stopped in the middle, then certainly he's done. Right. The question is, what about if he's reassessed before you even started the lashes? So according to our Mishnah, it looks like that wouldn't qualify. Like then you'd go with the second assessment, um, and that would be the case of when it's the same day evaluation. According to the Brisa, where where you would still give him the second assessment because the now he's in a different situation. Like both assessments were correct, but now it's a week later, so that's why we go with the second assessment.
So they haven't started giving lashes then? So they've
Right,
assessed him a
right,
few times. The one
correct,
today. So why are
correct.
they reassessing him a day later, a week later?
Why they did, that's a good question. I don't know. Maybe it's like visibly apparent that he's less well off, or it doesn't address that. Why did that happen? I don't know.
I mean,
But you can imagine a variety of scenarios.
once they've assessed him, they start giving the lashes. No, what they're going to decide? No, well, we're not
Yeah,
going to.
maybe the lasher was on vacation. I don't know. I mean, yes, usually, generally speaking, at least with the death penalty, and I assume I think with everything else as well. Once you've delivered the sentence, then you carry it out. But there could be circumstances. You can imagine circumstances where, for whatever reason, that wasn't possible, right?
So then I'm still not clear what the kasha was, which is well, first assessment, second assessment, then you wait a few days. Well,
The question is, in the case of where the second assessment was done on a different day. Um, no, sorry. The question is, what we seem to have a dispute between the Mishnah and the Brisa, in if you had the second assessment before you started administering any lashes. According to the Mishnah, it sounds like that you go with the second assessment. According to the Brisa, it sounds like you stick with the original assessment, and we resolve it by saying the Mishnah and the Brisa are talking about different cases. In one case, the second assessment was on a different day. In the other case, the second assessment was on the same day, and so they would both agree in each case, right? In each case, they would both agree that if the second assessment was on the same day. Um, Second. Mm. If it was on the same day, then we disregard the first assessment. And we just go with the second one and we go ahead and give him his lashes. But if it was on a different day, then both the Mishnah and the Brisa would agree that he's done, that his condition changed and he does not get the lashes.
Didn't we learn that the Gemara said loka in the loka lo? Weren't we talking about where the lashes had begun versus they had not begun yet? And if they had begun and we determined that he couldn't take it anymore, we stop and he's done.
That's
Versus,
correct.
so wasn't that the discussion? Whether they'd started or not? In this case, we're having talking about
Yeah.
the
So
second
why?
assessment that before it even started.
Right. But then the Brisa sounds like it's talking about a case where they hadn't started yet. So how do you account for the Brisa? The answer is you account for the Brisa by saying that that's talking about the case where the first assessment is uh, shown to be faulty, and then um, you would indeed give him the lashes that he was sentenced to.
But they hadn't. So is that a case where they hadn't even started, right?
Yeah,
So according to the Mishnah, if they'd started, then they give them the full amount. Wait, which is it? It says Loka in.
if they've started, then the Mishnah and the Brisa would both agree that if he has to be reassessed, then he's done. You don't have to continue. Even if he could be assessed that he could take more, he doesn't have to take more.
Right, okay. And if they hadn't
The only
started,
disagreement between Mishnah and Brisa is, well, it's not really disagreement. The only way where there's a distinction is if um,
they
if
hadn't
they
started.
if they hadn't started, then it makes a difference if the second assessment is on the same day, in which case we just cancel the first assessment and proceed, or if it's on a different day and we say now he's not the same. It's both. The original assessment was correct then. This assessment is correct now, and uh, he's uh, because he is less able, he gets the whole thing canceled.
He doesn't get anything.
Right.
And
Next mission.
according to the Mishnah, he would get what? He would get what they think he could get, or he would get everything.
It depends. Are we talking about the same day assessment, reassessment, or a future day reassessment?
No, it's the same day, according to the Mishnah.
So the same day, then yes, according to the Mishnah and the Brisa,
He gets everything, or he gets only what he can
he
tolerate.
gets whatever the second assessment is.
Uh-huh. All right.
You did a transgression that involves two separate prohibitions. Amdu omer echad, and then they said, okay, you're so how many lashes you get? 78, right? Two times 39. So they do the assessment, and they're like, yeah, you could take 78 lashes. Loka upater. Then you get those malchus and you're off the hook. V'im lav, but if they found that you can't take more than 39, loka umisrape v'chozer v'loka. You get the 39 for the first offense, right? Then you go to the hospital, you recover, then you get another 39 for the next offense. Vatanya, as the Gemara
The
says, what?
specific, he gets the full amount, or let's say he can only tolerate 30. So if he gets 30, then he comes back and he gets 9 plus
No,
the other 39.
no, because once you've started in on the first transgression, if you can only take 30, you can only take 30. You don't have to come back for more. But maybe you would come back for the second
Right.
transgression.
Right. So you come back for the person comes back and starts the second one from day one after he's finished.
Presumably, yeah. Vatanya, but we have a brisa. Ein omdin omed echad l'shnei lavin. Wait a minute. You don't do one assessment according to this brisa for two transgressions. Amar sheshel l'kasha had yamdu l'arbaim v'chada had yamdu l'arbaim v'tarte. Let's say they said he could get only 41. Okay. Now, remember, you have to do them in triplets, right? It has to be a number divisible by three. So if they say you can only get 41, how many do you actually get? 39. That means you haven't even started on your second one, on your second lav. But if they say originally you could do 42, so that means 39 for the first one and 3 for the second one. If you get that, then you're done. You're off the hook. Okay, with the same principle. Once you've started the Makkos for one transgression, that's it. Like you don't have to go to the hospital and recover. Like you've already paid your debt. Now, Ketzad Malkinosim. How does the lashing take place? Kofish Deyolav Amud Helach Vahelach. You tie his arms to a post, right? Like stretch out the arms. The Chazan Kasas Oches Bivgadav. This person who's in this official position, the guy who meets out the punishment, we're calling the Chazan HaKnesses. He's like the shamus. Oches Bivgadav grabs his clothing, and tears them off his back, or not necessarily tears, but stretches them so that his back is exposed. It doesn't matter if they get torn as a result, that's fine. Until his heart is uncovered, his chest. And there's a stone that is behind him, like a big boulder, let's say. But Chazon Knesses Omed Olav, the lasher stands on the rock. And he has this strap in his hand. Shel Egel, it's made of calfskin. And it's doubled over twice. And you have attached to it two straps of donkey leather. Yada tefach, the whip's handle is like one tefach long, rachba tefach, and one tefach wide. Varosha magas al pikreso, and the tip should be long enough that the tip can reach around from his back to his stomach. Umaka also shlish milfanov ushtei yados mileachrav. He lashes him so that the lash lands 1/3 on his stomach and 2/3 on his back. And the person being lashed isn't standing or lying down; he's leaned over. Um, because it says the judge should cast him down, so he's like downwards. He's facing downwards. He's leaning over. The guy who's giving the lashes, he uses one hand with all his strength. And then there's somebody who reads something. And what does he read? Im lo tishmor lasos, if warning you what happens if you don't do the mitzvos. From the and God will make wondrous plagues on you and your children. And then you keep repeating it while the lashes are administered. Ushmartem is Dibur Abrisazos, and he continues. You shall keep all of the words of this covenant. And he finishes with the pasuk, God is merciful and he will forgive your sin. And then you return to the beginning. What happens if, despite the assessment, the guy who's getting punished, he died? Potter, the guy who's doing the lashes, he's not liable. But if he gave him extra lash, he was supposed to give him X and he gave him X plus one. Then that's considered an accidental killing, and the lasher has to go into galus as any accidental killer. Niskalkel, if the person being punished soiled himself, bein b'riyeh, bein b'mayim, whether excrement or urine, potter. then then that's it. He's done. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Ha'ish B'rei V'Haisha B'mayim. Rabbi Yehuda says a, a man who's being lashed, he's gets off the hook only if he has a bowel movement, if he soils himself with excrement. But a woman, even if she only passes urine, she gets then she's off the hook. So there's like different standards for what constitutes humiliation for a man or a woman. And we will get into the details of this in the Gemara tomorrow.
Well, what was the case of the person who leads the donkey? There was a couple of Mishnayot before this, and that's considered two instead of one. I didn't,
Yeah, what
I
about it?
don't understand it. Why is that considered two bodies instead of one body?
Oh, because it's Psulei HaMikdashim? Yeah, that's kind of a legal, an odd legal thing that this animal is considered in itself two different species because it is hektish but also chulei. Yeah, this is a little
Uh,
bizarre, but the Gemara doesn't comment any further on that. Just leaves it there.
so, but it's talking about hektish muktashim, right?
Yeah,
Pasuli muktashim, right?
right. Yeah,
That's a shore, but he's driving. Ishari guf echadhu. It's one body.
right.
Vasawa kativ kishne gufim. It
Yeah.
is one body, but it's considered two. Why is it?
Well, because it's in some ways it's hekdesh, but it can't be used for hekdesh, right? It can't be sacrificed because it has a mum now. So it's partly hekdesh and partly chol.
Uh-huh. So therefore, what is he doing with it? If he uses it
Yeah,
for
yeah. Then it's as if he's using an ox and a donkey together because the animal within itself is part of two species, as it were.
but
Yeah,
it,
it's a
but
little
that,
bizarre.
no, that's not the. Oh, wait a second. That's not the one where he had two species. That's the
Yeah,
one where
yeah.
it's just
That's yeah. Go ahead.
isn't that considered just a money for sure? Basuli muktashim, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's that is basuli
The shore was made hekdesh, and then it got a mum. So now it's considered within itself. It has characteristics of two different species, as if making something hekdesh made it a different species. But removing it from hekdesh in a way reverts to its original species or whatever. So within itself, this one ox, it's considered two different species
or
within one body,
like an ox and a donkey or ox and a
like
cow,
an ox and a
ox,
donkey. Right.
whatever. Uh-huh. It's a little bizarre.
It is bizarre, but the Gemara doesn't comment any further on that.
All right.
Okay, see you tomorrow.
Okay.